It's been ages since we've seen an original IP from Bethesda Game Studios, because for the past 15 years, Todd Howard and co. have been feeding us nothing but a steady diet of Elder Scrolls and Fallout games. The studio's last game that wasn't Elder Scrolls or Fallout was IHRA Professional Drag Racing 2005. This was a fine simulation of the sport of drag racing, but I don't see them turning it into an epic open-world RPG anytime soon. Now though, we thankfully have a fresh new Bethesda property on the horizon in the shape of Starfield, the open-world space exploration RPG Bethesda revealed at this year's E3 Xbox Games Showcase. And while the trailer shown off in that showcase was heavy in atmosphere, it was light on actual detail of what kind of an experience Starfield will be. This leaves us wondering, hoping, and thinking about what we want to be in the finished game, and what we don't want. So for the record, Todd, if you're watching, here are those 7 things we don't want in Starfield. Please take note. Okay, I know it's trendy to dunk on Fallout 76 because, at release, that game was bad and boring and just shy of being a literal industrial money vacuum designed to suck coins out of its players' pockets. I also know Bethesda has done a lot of admirable work since release to improve conditions for the players who stuck around, which is great, but the fact remains that taking the Fallout experience and trying to turn it into a multiplayer game was a big, difficult swing in the first place.
I set this plan in motion, and I am the only one who can stop it.
The central draw of Bethesda games is in solitary exploration, discovering a vast, complicated world and piecing together what's going on by talking to NPCs, reading journals and computer logs, and some of the best environmental storytelling in video games.
I ain't wearing no goddamn tie. Or pants.
My favourite part of the Fallout games, for example, is exploring the vaults. Finding your way inside these huge mausoleums/social experiments and then trying to figure out what exactly happened there turns the game into an archaeological experience and detective story all at once, and there's nothing else quite like it.
Congratulations, citizens of Vault 11. You have made the decision not to sacrifice one of your own. You can walk with your head held high, knowing that your commitment to human life is a shining example to us all.
Needless to say, the experience is undermined when there are 6 other people there trying to do the same stuff, or just running around breaking your immersion with their rude usernames and much better equipment. I'm supposed to be doing a Chosen One story over here, stop reminding me I'm bad at the game. From what we've seen of Starfield so far, it seems this new game will be following a similar sort of lone wanderer story as found in Fallout and Elder Scrolls, with your character exploring the furthest reaches of uncharted space 300 years in the future. Therefore, it only makes sense for Starfield to be a focused, story-driven single-player experience. Fingers crossed it turns out that way. Fallout is about atomic annihilation. Skyrim is about an evil dragon that wants to dominate the world. And yet, despite these weighty themes, both of those games still manage to avoid being too serious in tone, as I think anyone who has encountered Fisto the robot can tell you.
Fisto reporting for duty. Please assume the position. Servos active.
Sure, the main quests in these games are full of drama and hard choices and loss, but one of the key things that makes Bethesda games so much fun is the weird and wonderful stuff you can find off the beaten path, like Skyrim's Hangover-inspired Night to Remember quest.
I see. So you don't remember fondling the statuary then? I'm guessing you also don't remember coming in here and blathering incoherently about marriage or a goat.
Or who could forget the General Atomics Galleria Mall in Fallout 4, staffed entirely by murderous robots? Not me.
Alright, you commie bastards! How do you like this?
Fallout New Vegas even had a dedicated perk called Weird Wasteland that let you see more kooky stuff as you explored, and friends, it did not disappoint. Although Fallout 4 did have this stuff, there was markedly less of it than in previous games. We're hoping that this doesn't mark a shift in focus for Bethesda and a trending towards seriousness that will carry on into Starfield.
You are approached by a frenzied scientist who yells, "I'm going to put my quantum harmonizer in your photonic resonation chamber."
While Starfield's short reveal trailer appears to be weighty and self-important in tone, we're taking the packaging here labelled Chunks brand space food and a beverage called Tranquility as a sign that Starfield will still be somewhat jokey. The presence of these astronaut foods tells us that even on the frontiers of space, you can't escape that Bethesda brand spoof of consumerism in the vein of Fallout's Dandy Boy apples, Blamco mac and cheese, or indeed the iconic Nuka-Cola.
What if there was a place with all the zip of Nuka-Cola?
Bethesda boss Todd Howard told The Telegraph that Starfield is like NASA meets Indiana Jones meets the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and in an interview with the Washington Post, Bethesda exec Ashley Cheng described Starfield as a Han Solo simulator. Presumably that means Starfield has more of a zesty, swashbuckling, adventurous vibe as opposed to, say, a 2001 A Space Odyssey simulator in which you would spend a lot more time grappling with the vastness of space and man's place in the infinite expanse of the cosmos. Bethesda has also confirmed that the game will have various factions, so it's possible that Constellation, the highfalutin faction shown in the trailer, are the serious, worthy space explorers a la Fallout 4's Minutemen, which leaves room for you to encounter other factions that will let you let your hair down a bit more, or let your hair down as much as is recommended when you're wearing a spacesuit. Listen, I know making video games is extremely hard technical work, and with the size and scale of an open-world RPG, bugs are going to crop up. But it would be super great if for once we could have a Bethesda game that launched without game-breaking bugs that prevent people from finishing the game properly, or just freak everybody out.
Now, I hope you don't mind, but I had to go rooting around there in your noggin to pull all the bits of lead out.
The worst case scenario, of course, is a situation like that of Cyberpunk 2077, where the game was hyped to infinity and beyond, and ended up being massively underwhelming, thanks in part to a wide variety of technical issues that made it difficult, confusing, or just soul-crushingly disappointing to play.
Flamingo. Flaming. Oh. The O. That's oxygen. There's no flame without oxygen.
No doubt Starfield is going to receive that same kind of hype and pre-launch fanfare, but here's hoping Bethesda can dodge the same cyberpunky pitfall. That said, this is Bethesda we're talking about, who have only now, finally, after 10 years, got a version of Skyrim that is mostly bug-free. All I'm saying is that I don't want to be here in 10 years watching Todd Howard, who still somehow hasn't visibly aged in any way, telling me that Starfield is now finally bug-free. And also, I don't know, available on the Microsoft BrainChip 4000? No way I'm upgrading for the 3000 just for smell-o-vision.
There's real magic when you step into a new world and can make it your own.
Elder Scrolls and Fallout couldn't be more disparate when it comes to their respective aesthetics. One is a gorgeous Tolkien-esque fantasy world full of lush fantasy vistas and warm inviting taverns, and the other is a blasted wasteland where you might have to drink out of a filthy toilet just to survive. I used to be a Dragonborn, you know. In spite of this, there are definitely similarities in the way Bethesda Game Studios' games look in motion, mainly centered on the non-player characters with their robotic walking animations, uncanny facial movements, and slightly wonky lip-syncing.
Eating, drinking, farting, and screwing!
This must be what it's like watching a Nicolas Cage movie dubbed into French. Much of that is to do with the fact that the team has used the same game engine, the Creation Engine, to run its RPGs for decades now, and how some of its deficiencies have definitely started to show in the past few games. That's why it's encouraging to hear that Starfield will benefit from Bethesda's biggest engine overhaul ever, being powered as it is by the Creation Engine 2. In a GamesIndustry.biz interview, Todd Howard claimed that this is a bigger leap than even the one between Morrowind and Oblivion, so compare this to this. So what you're saying is expect even more grass? To be honest though, the game world itself is almost the easy bit. We already know Starfield is going to have spectacular terrain created using increasingly popular photorealistic technology called photogrammetry. We also know that the facilities and vehicles are going to have an awesome functional sci-fi aesthetic that the development team refers to as NASA-punk. The difficult bit is natural convincing NPCs, and that's why we sincerely hope Bethesda is going to ensure that it's not a world populated by a bunch of broken puppets. I mean, unless you land on the planet Broken Puppetron 12, of course. In many ways, Fallout 4 was a step forward for the series, but there were definitely aspects of the game that didn't hit the high watermarks set in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. Chief among these was the Fallout 4 conversation system, which felt a lot more random and guesswork-based over the excellent persuasion options we had in the previous games. Also, not a fan of conversation options that come out of your character's mouth differently to what you were shown in the menu.
What? The great Clockwork Dick is stumped?
It's Synth Detective, jackass.
Naturally, we're hoping for a return to form in the field of conversations, and tied into this is a yearning for better companion characters and better relationships that you build throughout the game. While Fallout 4 had a few memorable companions, like Nick Valentine, the robot Private Dick, it's a bit telling that the companion we have the fondest memories of is the dog, who can't talk.
Hey boy, you know any tricks?
Seeing as Starfield is a space exploration game as well, we have to wonder if the game will include aliens. If you're exploring planets untouched by humanity, those worlds won't have humans that you can talk to, bribe, persuade, and romance. So, will those planets you visit be populated by chat-uppable aliens, or is it going to be a much more lonely experience than even Fallout 4 was? We'd prefer the former, so long as any aliens don't start immediately badgering us to help out settlements.
I've heard of another settlement that's in trouble. I'll mark it on your map.
One key question yet to be answered about Starfield is exactly how is combat going to work in the game? A futuristic space rifle is featured prominently in the trailer, which to me says that Bethesda wants you to be reassured that yes, you will be shooting things. Which is cool. The question is, how much shooting and how will it be handled? Combat in Bethesda games has traditionally been a bit of a thorny issue. It works in Skyrim because you have myriad options available to you in a fight, from running in and wailing on people with swords, to hitting them at close range with bows and spells, to just shouting them into space with your dragon powers. In the Fallout games, on the other hand, where your options are mostly guns or bigger guns, Bethesda had to introduce VATS, the assisted targeting system that allowed you to actually hit stuff with anything approaching reliability.
In other words, VATS lets you pause for a moment and makes Mr. Scary go away.
So which kind of combat will Starfield have? Bethesda's other studios produce some great traditional first-person shooters, such as the Wolfenstein series from Machine Games. Could Starfield be heading down that road into more conventional FPS territory? I don't know about you, but over here at Outside Xbox, we're hoping not. For us, the draw of a Bethesda RPG is the exploration, the conversations, the sneaking, the lockpicking, the hacking, all the stuff you do to avoid actually having to shoot someone. Of course, sometimes it will come down to a shootout regardless of that, which is why we'll still have plenty of points invested in small guns. Or maybe the mysterious stranger perk for emergencies. We don't mind how you explain it in world, Bethesda, but something akin to the VATS system would be just fine for Starfield, for those who want a space RPG, not Battlefield 4 in space. The Outer Worlds, which is already doing its own Fallout in space thing, knows what's up, which is why it included its own take on VATS, known as tactical time dilation, which allowed you to slow down time in order to make sure that you were making the critical shots you needed to get through combat encounters. Or, to put it another way, I'm bad at shooting, Bethesda, help me out. One thing we can take away from the Starfield trailer is that space travel is involved. Not just because it's literally a space exploration game, but also we see our character taking the controls of a spaceship and beginning a journey that will take them off-world. Which is fine and good. What we're less enthusiastic about is the prospect of Starfield turning into a spaceflight game, because while a spaceship is cool to have, controlling the ship, we can take or leave. We already have games for that. If it's space combat you're after, Elite Dangerous or Star Wars Squadrons has you covered. We'd rather Starfield did one thing well than several things badly. Take Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, for example, which included space combat sequences alongside the regular COD running and gunning. Sure, it was a brief novelty to fly up into space and start fighting among the stars, but the controls were bad, the combat overlay hectic and confusing, and you were constantly being told to return to the combat zone, even though you were in, space. There's plenty of room up here.
This is Admiral Salem Koch of the Olympus models. You are defeated. Death is no disgrace.
For an example of how space travel could work, we look again to Obsidian's excellent The Outer Worlds. Here, your ship, the Unreliable, serves as your fast travel system between planets, but also as a kind of mobile player housing, letting you store your gear and catch up with your companions between missions.
It's the craziest plan I've ever heard. And I mean that as a compliment.
Something similar to that for Starfield would be great, with perhaps even more customization letting you style your ship the way you want to. And while we're on the topic of personal asks, I would like it to be marginally less complicated than the base building in Fallout 4. I know a lot of people enjoyed the Wasteland Workshop stuff, and that's fine. That's just not what I signed up for, and I admit I barely touched it, except for when it was expressly required to advance the story. All I want is to be able to customize my player housing easily and intuitively, not spend hours trying to hook wires up to power sources to power appliances, then realizing I'm using the wrong generator. If I can't make the lights go on, do you really want me doing the electrics on a spaceship? Right, no, exactly. Thanks for watching as we relayed our list of demands for Starfield, which comes out on the distant future space date of November the 11th, 2022. Todd, again, if you're watching, that seems like more than enough time to implement our whims and wants. Thank you in advance. If the rest of you have got anything to add to the wish list, chuck it in the comments, and maybe Bethesda can get around to those as well. And if you'd like to support us, please leave a like, and even subscribe, why not, for a video like this one on the regular from Outside Xbox. Bye!